Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Lawyer Show. Are you somebody who is very aggressive? Are you somebody who has to win at all costs? Are you the type of person that would go to law school and in the middle of your first year, go to the library, find the important cases and tear pages out of the book? If you are, then this show's for you. This is the Lawyer Show, and this is a show for lawyers, about lawyers, with lawyers, where we talk about water cooler things, where we talk about our own alpha tendencies, where we make fun of other people who are not lawyers. We do things like that on the Lawyer Show. That's what the Lawyer Show is about. And so we have everybody on the Lawyer Show. We try to get other lawyers who do different things, and just shows how interdisciplinary being a lawyer is, how we dominate other areas of the world, suck the blood out of it, suck the blood out of people. And today is no exception. Today we have a good friend of mine. We have Yoon Kim, is I would say my co-counsel. I am your lawyer, Jeremy Rosenthal. Yoon is a lawyer, but he is not practicing. He is the director of community supervision and corrections for Collin County. In other words, he is the chief of all the probation officers in the county. And so, Yoon Kim, welcome to the Lawyer Show.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeremy. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor. I'm excited.
Indeed, Yoon. And so I'm going to, a few things about Yoon, and I'm going to let him introduce himself here in a minute, but I'm going to poison our audience's mind about you first, if that's okay. Before you get in there, this is effective. They don't talk about this in law school about effective advocacy. What I want to do anytime I'm arguing a case or arguing a motion is I want to caricaturize the state's case before they can have a chance to tell the judge what it's about, right? Kind of turn it into a cartoon straw man, and then I punch it, and then I'm like, oh, well, tell us what your case is about, prosecutor. And by then, right, they're already climbing an uphill mountain. So Yoon is a lawyer who was a prosecutor out of law school, and you went to UT for law, right, as well? You're UT twice. Is that right?
UT, double horns.
Great. We'll get into that here in a minute. But you went to Texas for law school. You came out and were a Collin County prosecutor. Is that right?
Yes.
And I was a prosecutor the same. We worked there together at the same time. We overlapped. Yes, I think so.
Oh yeah. In fact, my first day, I believe you were chief of court 2.
Okay.
And you had Maria 2 and Gary Knapp as your underlings.
We were
it was a good court.
Did I make
y'all were great.
Did I make you do push-ups?
No.
Did I make you get my laundry?
Maybe.
Okay. Do I still owe you money?
No, you're
for
good.
that?
We're
okay.
Good.
Let me know. And just tell me what the interest is. I'm sure it's not pretty. So you were a prosecutor for a while, and that's right. We overlapped, and I think I'm pretty sure I've tried a case against you. I think you beat me because I never forget those. And then you left the DA's office. You were in private practice for some time, and then after that, you were actually the Collin County District Clerk for a spell, and then you are now in your current role. But go ahead and tell everybody. Let's go before that. Let's talk about you before that. Talk about Yoon Kim, little Yoon Kim, growing up stuff.
Little Yoon Kim growing up. Well, all right, here we go. Immigrated to the States when I was 3. Grew up in Houston, Southwest Houston, Alief, Texas. That's my hometown. And then went to UT undergrad. Went to law school right after undergrad, which in hindsight, I think maybe I should have gotten some real world experience. So it was just kind of a boom, boom. And then my first real job ever, well, I take that back. I was a waiter at Macaroni Grill
That's
during
real
college.
world experience.
That's a real world experience. That was a great experience. It was very interesting. Yeah, my first real job was Collin County DA's office. I ended up here because my wife grew up in Plano. I met her at UT, and she already got a job up here in Collin County as a teacher. And so I said, I guess I'm moving to Collin County. I was interviewed by David Waddell and hired, and that's when I met you and all the other lovely folks who a vast majority of them are on the defense side now. So did prosecuting for 3 years. I had some really good chiefs. I had Gail Lako as my first chief. I had Bill Dobianski as my second, and Schomburger as my third chief. Then I did defense bar for 9 years, which I can't believe it. 9 years as a solo practice. Well, not solo. I was with Randy Goodwin. I don't know if you remember that. I started out with Randy Goodwin. We had a practice together. Then I went solo, and then Michelle Melton and I had a firm. And after 9 years, yeah, things kind of changed, and I jumped into county politics, which was wild. I mean, it was wild. Um,
Well,
6 months.
Well, okay.
Just real quick, for 6 months, which it was just blink of an eye.
So many of the powers that be that engage in county politics and county-wide politics are not here, and they're not present. They're not here to defend themselves, which means that now's our time to really get them. I want to go back to a couple things you said. You said boom boom, and that's me having a seventh grade sense of humor. I always find that thing kind of funny. But you also said that you wanted to have, or in retrospect might consider real world experience. What types of things have you gone back and thought, man, I wish I'd have given something like this a try or something like that a try first? Is there anything in particular?
I mean, honestly, I really wasn't prepared for law school. My grades weren't great. I met my wife my senior year in undergrad at UT. And when law school started, I didn't have to change my apartment. I didn't really have to change my friends. I was just focused on dating my wife. And so, yeah, so law school was kind of a shell shock. I mean, it was fine. I great friends, some great relationships I built there, great professors. I didn't really understand how to study for a lot of these exams. At UT Law, there's no midterm. I mean, it's just you sit through classes, you discuss cases, and then you have a final at the end of the semester. And so, but I did know I wanted to do public service, and so I was looking at different DA's offices. I did apply to Dallas, and then Collin was one I applied to, and luckily I got the position. So
you must be you say that you weren't ready for law school. I'm missing something, because either you're extraordinarily humble, or you're not a good judge of your own. Texas is a hard law school to get into. I did not even waste my $43.50 or whatever the application fee was. Texas is a hard law school to get into, so either you had a killer LSAT or your grades were in fact actually pretty good, because you don't just buy 2 Big Macs and then in it you get with the scratch off is not your admission to UT Law School. So you're snowing us somehow.
Well, my LSAT score was fine. I mean, it was fine. And my grades were pretty good. I was an English major at UT, and I was a biology minor. I was pre-med for majority of my undergrad, and then I decided not to take the MCAT, and I said, I'm going to take the LSAT. Really, I didn't have a lot of direction. It was just kind of like, what do I want to do? There was a lot of cultural influences. I mean, and really kind of just from my Korean upbringing, it was kind of engineer. I mean, you probably heard this before: engineer, doctor, lawyer, and so I was kind of accountant. I knew I wanted to do one of those, and so I got into law school. But I guess many of my classmates, they knew why they were there. there was a certain area of law that they wanted.
They were
Me,
ripping
I was
out. They
kind of
were
like,
ripping out pages from the books in the library.
they were. They were smart. They knew how to study. They had several actually had family members who were attorneys, their father, their uncle. And so, man, there was just a lot of guidance. They grew up around attorneys. They grew up around, whether it's judges, corporate in-house counsel. And so, but I just kind of showed up, and, I'm like, okay, I'll read these cases, and this is interesting. This is new, just talk about cases, and very theoretical on many levels. I remember federal courts, that class. It was just so theoretical. It was just kind of woo. I ended up with a C.
Does the
C
tax code? Does the tax code have a soul?
It is, yeah.
And if so, good, bad, is it evil?
Exactly. So, interestingly, my best classes were like business administration, environmental law, tax. I actually didn't do very well in civil procedure or criminal procedure, which is interesting. But I feel like I learned that as a practicing attorney.
Mm-hmm.
You hire onto the DA's office, and they kind of throw you in there. And let's be honest, in 2005 in Collin County, it was a very different county than what it is now. And so I'm the first to admit, and I even admitted this when I was a defense attorney, my recommendations are very high. I don't know if you remember that or that, but I think a lot of people, it was, on a state jail, it'd be like 2 for 5, 2 for 5, 2 for 5. And so it takes some experience and kind of understanding people in the criminal justice system, mm-hmm. To really understand, the whole process of what should be the outcome of this case. That takes experience and knowledge and just a lot of things. And so I have to admit, definitely where I am now and in my position now, there's definitely a better understanding of the criminal justice system, not just in Collin, but even statewide.
Yeah, I do remember that you were particularly mean. I do remember that. Okay, and that's actually a very interesting point that you mentioned, because I've said this to several people that we were meaner. We really were, and
we really were, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know that meaner is the right word to use, but the mentality and the culture was certainly different. John Roach Sr., who was our boss, right? He was the elected DA of Collin County. He had a mentality of, look, in between the lines, right? We're going to play the game in between the lines, and we're going to follow all the rules, and we're going to do everything right, and we're going to follow it to the letter. But within those lines, we're going to crush you like a soda can. And we're going to be the big dog that's going to influence everything. And and on a larger level that you and I were not necessarily privy to, there were fights that he would have necessarily with district judges, with probably community supervision and corrections, and their office took systematic stands in different areas that really made a much broader impact. For instance, I'll give you two for instances. Number one is they would never waive a jury, or they would never allow what we call an open plea, which is there was a policy, as you remember, where the state of Texas, so a defendant has a right to a jury trial, right? And you can always waive that jury trial right by case law and now by statute. The state of Texas also has a right to a jury trial, and they can insist on that. So they can basically block you from exercising your right to waive. And in some instances where the prosecutor and the defendant just can't agree on punishment. Look, we agree that we're guilty. We agree that we've done that we're going to be found guilty. We just can't agree on the punishment, right? Prosecutor wants me to go to the prison for 10 years. I think I ought to be on probation. So we have the most efficient mechanism is what's called an open plea, right? Which is where and I'm explaining all these things because many of our guests, or not our guests, our viewers are not lawyers, or if they are lawyers, they're not criminal lawyers. But in those instances, basically what we do is we go in front of the judge and say, Judge, you decide the punishment. He pleads guilty. She pleads guilty. Judge, you decide the punishment here. And the judge comes back and says, oh, okay, well, all right, then I'm going to give you 3 years of jail. Go away, right? Our predecessor, John Roach, who we worked for in the district attorney's office, had a policy of, we're not going to do that. You're either going to take our offer or you're going to go in front of a jury, which was kind of not very friendly to the system overall, but just sort of asserted the dominance. I had another point that I was trying to make with it too. I said 2 examples, and I gave you one example, and the other one is escaping me. It may have been, I remember what it was. You remember they used to offer 15 years minimum if you were alleged to be selling drugs, right?
Yeah.
You know, and that is a very, because most, look, okay, there's drug cartels, there's the movies, right? What Narcos, which I'm sure you've watched. You get all that stuff, and that's kind of what you have in your mind. In reality, the vast majority of drug dealers live at home with mom and dad. They're not very good drug dealers, because if they were good drug dealers, they wouldn't be getting caught. And most of the time, or a lot of the times, they're addicted themselves. So we're not, nobody like that's going to plead to 15 years. And nor should they, really. I mean, that's a type of person who in most instances ought to have some intervention, which you kind of provide. But those are some of the heavy-handed things that we would do as prosecutors to kind of bring this back full circle. And I remember there's a particular lawyer that one day he wanted to plead guilty, but he missed his deadline that I gave him to plead guilty, and I made him try the case. I feel bad about that to this day, sort of.
I do remember the policies about 15 TDC for a delivery. If you're a drug dealer, I do remember that, and I do recall an open plea, and I remember this because the defense attorney was Greg Gibbs. As you know, his lovely wife Letitia works in probation. She is amazing. Just
is she awesome. Right there? Is she right there making you? I mean, I'm sure not that you wouldn't say this otherwise. But I'm sure as
no, she's not right there. But I do remember an open plea, and the jury did give permission, and maybe it's because Bill Dobianski asked for permission. I was never I never reached a felony chief, and so I know really if I had a question about hey chief, is this a case that policy says this is the plea? Is this something I can diverge on, or can we? I mean, I did speak to him, and he talked to the powers that be, and so yeah. But I do remember an open plea for a first degree delivery, and the defendant was 19, 20 years old. It really just kind of as you described, live with parents, and jury gave probation very fast, very quickly, and I mean that was the right thing to do. He had no priors, so. Yeah. But yeah, and I think I do believe criminal justice and probation has changed in many ways. And one of the big reasons that I see is, and there's even articles about this, and when you talk to people who have been involved in previous legislative sessions and some of the laws that were passed, is I think in the past, probation really was just condition compliance. It's, hey, you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z, and that's it. If you don't do it, depending on the jurisdiction in the county, you could get hammered or whatever, or a different consequence. But probation has evolved quite a bit to evidence-based practices, risk assessments, evaluations, and we're kind of, and this is just me talking, we're kind of tasked to fix people, really. It's kind of find out what their criminogenic risks are. Is it their peers? Is it trauma? Is it a financial situation? Whatever it is, and try to fix them. And so, TDCJ, who is really, it's the parent organization that does the funding for probation. They tout all the time, and this is a good thing, how many prisons have been shut down. And I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it's been a lot. Just in the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a lot of prisons shut down because probation has been doing a good job. A lot of defense attorneys, it may seem like to a defense attorney, man, everyone's getting revoked because I only get appointed or hired or retained because some motion's been filed. But if you look at success rates and outcomes, it's definitely on the positive side. Our county,
Mm-hmm.
we're way below the state average for revocations, meaning, this is what percentage of probationers get revoked to TDC, and we're way below that. And it's not because we fudge our numbers or anything like that. We don't do that. It's just we really, really try, starting with good policies, good hiring practices, to hire folks who care about people.
Yeah.
That's actually an interview question: is do you believe people can change? Because if you are a probation officer that says not really, this may not be the right job for you. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, Denton County is right over there. That's where you belong. Grayson County, well, that's like moot there. They don't even put people on probation up there.
Well, but I mean, this is kind of the statewide narrative of good hiring practices, and then identifying criminogenic risk, and kind of really believing in the data and the research and the evidence about outcomes. That's why this legislative session, there's such a stress on state jails. There's research, and it was a lot. I mean, it was a pretty extensive research done about recidivism in state jails, showing that it's really not working to help people. But look, when I was a defense attorney, I'm going to be honest, I had some defendants that I got appointed to over and over and over again. I think you know what I'm talking about. It's like every year they'd commit a new offense, and usually it was a state jail. And I'm not going to say the defendant's name, but every time I'd get appointed to him, I'm like, dang it, you got arrested again. And he's like, well, hey, Mr. Kim, thanks for, and it was just my goal to work a 180-day state jail. That's he wasn't getting probation because he wasn't amenable to probation. And so I'm just trying to work represent my client, and trying to get what I felt, what he felt was like the best deal. And it's an adversarial system. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I have on many occasions been court appointed to somebody, and they hire someone else. They go, I don't, for whatever reason. And and it always, and the DA offers the same deal to the retained attorney, which to me, that's fair, because that'd be kind of messed up if Yoon Kim shows up and it's 5 TDC, but then Jeremy Rosenthal shows up with no new evidence,
and it's 20 years TDC.
Like, yeah, Jeremy, we'll do deferred. And so of course I'm like, okay, well that's good. But yeah, I mean, 9 years worth of stories like that, and highs and lows and stress and worry and victories. And so it's been pretty exciting. I'm not going to lie. I do believe, as a defense attorney, I did Denton. I never did Grayson, but I did Denton. I did Dallas. I did Fannin. But I really feel like Collin County did have the best judges, DAs, and the defense bar was great. I don't know if you remember this, but I was president.
I remember this.
Defense bar for 2 years.
I remember this.
Which I call the golden era of the defense bar.
Well, I think that's what we call it too. You're watching the Lawyer Show. We are on between noon and 1 on Thursdays on Facebook Live. This is JP, Kathy, and the Crew Network. You can see JP, Kathy, and the Crew between 7:30 and 9, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. My guest today is Yoon Kim. So, Yoon, you said a couple things that I want to kind of go back to. You've said twice now that I'm not going to lie, and which makes me think that about 2/3 of what you're telling me is not true, and then you have to say, but wait, now I'm going to. Yeah. Okay, so you knew coming on here, and man, I've got to commend you greatly for this, because I pride myself on kicking probation officers, and figuratively, CSCD, I pride myself in kicking you guys in the groin as hard as I can, as often as I can. And you have come on here very, very bravely. So you do know that I am going to have to kind of ask you some hot seat questions. And so here's the first one. We're going to get to Coach Beard and how you guys stole him. We're going to get to that in a minute. Don't worry about that.
All
right. This is your opportunity to criticize your predecessor, okay? what have you come in and changed? What's different? And I will say this, there are some policies that we like very much. I'll tell you one that I ran into this for the first time probably within the last month, which is that it used to be compulsory, as I understand it, and I may be mistaken, but my understanding is that if you got arrested for something else, it was compulsory that you be revoked. In other words, if you were on probation for felony whatever, right, or misdemeanor whatever, and then you pick up a brand new criminal trespass, that's going to trigger the state of Texas trying to take your probation away and do something else with you, maybe not necessarily put you in jail. And I actually had a conversation with a probation officer, and she said, no, I have the discretion now whether or not to revoke him based on this new arrest, and I'm not going to revoke this guy. He does his best. He tries hard. This is a step back for him, having gotten arrested again, but we're moving in the right direction. Talk about some of the new things that you've instituted. You don't have to criticize your predecessor if you don't want. We can just kind of put a positive spin on it. Talk about some of the things that you've done to leave your mark.
Well, I think the first thing that when I started was really bringing CSCD into 21st century regarding technology. We would still walk around the courthouse with paper for signatures and inter-office stuff and email stuff. And at this time, even Defense Bar was e-filing. And so we brought just Adobe Pro scanners and to e-file and e-serve, really just to kick up the efficiency and to create a more efficient department, because time is important. It changed some policies about how quickly you have to respond to an email, to a phone call. Customer service is important. Opened up communication, one instruction that everybody received in the department. And I do want to throw out there that I believe, when I was a district clerk, I loved all those employees. They were fantastic. I was there for 6 months. I built a lot of relationships, but here, I really take pride in our staff. I really feel like they are, I want to say it's the best department in the county. And we're continuing, and it's on me for the training. It's on me for the good policies. It's on me to have good leaders. Because
what's the worst?
We have 110 employees.
What's the worst department in the county?
I'm not going to say. There is none.
Oh.
Everyone's good. Everyone's great, and we're just a little bit better.
And I wonder why I can't get other public officials and government people to come on here.
But the communication aspect, the training aspect, just kind of like, hey, think about a lot of the folks we hire. They are criminal justice degrees in college, a lot of UNT grads, and you 22, 23 years old, and you hire on, and you're just kind of like, yeah, now I'm going to have a caseload of 125, 130 people, and I'm going to, supervise them. And so there's a lot that wisdom, experience, all of that comes over time, but good training, good hiring practices, that matters. We have a big project right now, and that's CSCD uses its own case management software called CSS, Corrections Solutions Software. So we're not integrated with Odyssey at all. Like if you were to file a motion, we would not know about it unless you served us. Yes, really? Unless you. So even if a judge signs an order, we don't know about it because there's no integration. And so we have a big project of Tyler Supervision, creator of Odyssey, where they're working on a new case management that's going to integrate us with the county, and just even everything from a jailing. If someone goes to jail, it's like, hey, we need to know about it. So that, and then we've definitely revamped audits and personnel evaluations. We really want to focus on good work product and having a staff that really cares about probationers, because our job, quite honestly, is not to get upset at what the defense bar and DA's plea bargain to or what the judge sentenced to. We just have to supervise and do a good job. I mean, that's the bottom line, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so from a director perspective, it's like, okay, um, think about all the defendants you've had in your career, and like what I have had, a lot of people with a lot of problems, hurts, just the worst type of situations they can be in. A lot of broken people, and so we're in charge of rehabilitating those people, and yet staff and myself, we're broken too. So we just have to really do a good job of making sure we understand what our job is, having good policies. I absolutely for things like integrity, falsification, things like that. I mean, it's zero tolerance. Even in our ethics training, I said, hey, if you've lied or you have lied and done something where it's unethical and whatever it is, lie on your timesheet, on your time clock. I can't have you sitting in a courtroom, testifying, getting someone revoked when the truth of the matter is, you falsified your timesheet or something like that. And so those are things that I know that our staff understands. It's very important. We have retention has always been a challenge. For some odd reason, I don't know why, kids don't want to be like when you ask a teen, what's your dream job? They don't seem to say probation officer. I don't know why. I just don't understand. And so a lot of people kind of fall into supervision because they want to be a corrections officer at TDCA. They want to be a prison guard or maybe CPS. And they kind of, some folks will want to work here. But, it's all about, it's about retention as well. And because of, I've been in Austin twice so far this legislative session. The funding system for probation, it's not ideal. You could also argue it's broken. And so, if that mechanism doesn't change, retention is going to be very hard. We definitely don't want to see a sheriff's office detention officer without a degree getting paid more than a probation officer, and you need to have a degree to be certified. And so it's just a lot of things to juggle, and it's exciting for me. I kind of wanted to do something more administration leadership. I think that's why I was kind of looking to kind of shut down my law practice. And yeah, it's been quite a challenge. It's been crazy actually. And then with COVID, oh man.
Yeah, we do have to get into COVID here in a second. One thing I think, sort of my attitude with it and what I tell, well, first off, I think what makes effective probation officers is that you have to have the heart of a servant. I think you have to be somebody who is in public service to have that as your main goal. I tell my clients that the probation officers they have a very difficult job. They just really do. They have very large caseloads. The funding isn't always there. They're probably not compensated for as well as they could be. They're constantly dealing with very difficult people. They probably get told off. I'm guessing once a week, maybe more. They deal with difficult folks who don't answer the phone and play games and who lie to them. And so they're stretched and pulled and pushed every direction. Now, on the flip side of that, one of the reasons I'm a defense lawyer is because I don't know how to characterize this, but man, there's just something about authority gone awry that really triggers me. And so maybe it was growing up, having been treated unfairly in the fourth grade, or getting kicked out of the middle school band. I didn't really get kicked out. That's probably exaggerating, but instances in my life where I kind of feel like sort of authority figures were sort of flexing and sort of bound by policy, and then the brain just sort of shuts off. I went to military school. I think you know this about me. Explains my haircut and my toughness. But I went to military school, and a lot of red tape, a lot of administrative policies, a lot of up and down, and just really no flexibility. And so you would run into something that you would consider to be an injustice, and then you would go, the appeal process works like, well, I have to do what our policy says, and I cannot I'm not going to underrule my underling on this. And then you would take it a step higher. And then it would be, well, I cannot, as a matter of policy, overrule my underling or his underling. And then it goes higher. And you're like, what's the point? At some point, is somebody going to turn their brain on here? And maybe I'm wrong about this, but damn it, listen to me. And so one of the things when it comes to probation officers, when I talk to my clients, that's sort of the thing that if I get upset, that's why. It's because we are in a situation where I kind of feel like we're not really being heard, where we've got an authority figure or an authoritative situation that's like a freight train that's gone in the wrong direction, and it's really, really hard to stop. And so that part to me, and again, I understand how hard it can be when what's the average caseload for a probation officer?
Like right now, regular caseload because of COVID is about 120 to 125.
Okay, I was going to guess 50. It's more than double that. So you've got 120 people, 30 of whom suck, right, and don't return calls and are behind on money. 80 of whom are just great and do what you tell them, and then probably 10 that get on your nerves because they're calling and asking permission to go to the refrigerator, right? You probably get those too, and so you're in that kind of that you're just one out of 120, and so when you're the squeaky wheel, you're going to get the grease, whether that's good or that's bad. And I tell folks too, when they're going on probation, your job is to fit in, right? Probation is like whack-a-mole, right? The game where the thing pops up, and if you're the one that stands out, you're going to get hit with it. And another thing, I'll tell you this, and I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. I also tell clients a couple things about probation. Number one is I tell them that there is that probation officers and authority figures, not just limited to probation officers, have what I call a boa constrictor reflex, okay? Which is the boa constrictor, and you can check this if you're on your computer at home. Again, probably nobody's watching, but if you're on your computer at home, you can see this, that a boa constrictor will wrap around its prey, but it won't do anything. It won't do anything until the prey fights, and then it'll squeeze it, right? And what I tell my clients is, look, you want to be very, very careful, because the minute you become a pain in the rear, the boa constrictor you're gonna have that reflex. And so I'm always telling my clients that in preparation for their probation, and we all know, we have a pretty good idea ahead of time who's going to be a problem and who's not going to be a problem. Sometimes, though, you can also have somebody who is kind of wants to one-up the probation officer. In other words, somebody who's like, I've got a vacation I've got to take we're going to Greece next month. Well, we're on felony probation, and I don't know that they're going to go for that. Well, you need to tell them this and that and the other. And that's a situation where maybe in a perfect world, I wish I got these round trip tickets 3 years ago, and I didn't know I was going to be okay, fine. And so that always kind of puts us in a weird spot too, because I can see why a probation officer would kind of want to, well, no, we can't do that. But at the same time, I think some of my clients need to understand that, look, part of this is conformity. Whether it's fair or whether it's not fair, it's conformity. And one of the things with Collin County is I've had very successful clients that have gone on probation, right? Clients who have their own businesses, clients who are prominent in the community, and they may struggle with alcohol, for instance, or they may have an anger issue that they need some kind of resolution with, but it's very hard for them. It's very hard for them to accept authority. And so that is always what I've kind of that's what I've seen as one troubled spot from this. And so anyway, do you talk with your probation officers about when Jeremy calls, just give up and do what he says?
No, but we talk all the time about the customer service aspect and what a style of supervision where you're really trying to build a rapport and a relationship. And I think that's the important part about really kind of identifying the risks. You really don't need to spend a whole lot of resources on somebody who's going to self-correct, who's going to be fine. I mean, you really don't have to have all that power and try to control. And that's a coaching thing. And honestly, that's on me. That's on leadership. I do hope that in the last 5 years, which I can't believe it's been almost 5 years since I've been director, that you are seeing less of officers who just want, go power trip.
I think so. I think
less of it.
I think so. I would sit here. I'd be the first to tell you that I think that's true.
Okay.
And you used to see, and I'm sure until the day we die, you're going to see it. I'm going to see it. You get. I call it it's the Cartman syndrome, right? Respect my authority, and so it's real hard to. I get it, and I understand why that Cobra, or I call it, it's not the Cobra reflex. Cobra is they just kill you, right? They just bite you. The boa is the one that wraps up. I understand the boa constrictor reflex. I mean, it only makes sense. Nobody likes being challenged, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like being challenged by my child, right? I mean, maybe on occasion you got a point, but we'll deal with that after the fact, after she's grounded or something like that. You're watching. Oh, sorry. Let me. You're watching JP Cathy and the Crew network. You can see JP Cathy and the Crew between 7:30 and 9 Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This is the Lawyer Show. We're on between noon and 1 on Thursdays on Facebook Live. I'm your lawyer, Jeremy Rosenthal. Today, my co-counsel is Yoon Kim. What were you going to say, Yoon, before I interrupted you? Sorry.
That boa constrictor analogy, I think in many circumstances that might be an actual good analogy. I can see
the best analogies are sports analogies.
Yeah, I mean, I can see
my office is sick of them.
Yes, let's say a probationer is really non-compliant, or they're testing positive UAs, and of course you look at the offense and just kind of everything about, and I can definitely see our department really is just kind of like, man, if you're going to keep struggling, it's just going to get tighter and tighter.
Yeah.
But we do answer to the courts, and the judges who. Texas Administrative Code, probation exists to serve the court. It's a really weird system because we're not county, we're not state. We don't have the same health insurance as county. It's just really bizarre just how we're set up and structured and funded. But what the courts want to see is us doing our absolute best to work with probationers. It's kind of like, think of like if you've had experience in having a defendant in like a drug court or DWI court, that level of, it's like, okay, you got a guy making a lot of mistakes, also kind of bowing up, being whatever, however it's characterized. But then you always have to step back and say, what do I do now? What is the most appropriate thing to do given the circumstance? And and you're right, a lot of it is subjective. And so when you have a probation officer with 125 people and they get to make a lot of subjective decisions, a lot of times I'll find out about something and I'll say, that's not what I would have done. Mm-hmm. And then it's a matter of circling back, talking to them. Now, depending on the situation, we will do disciplinary action, and we'll do write-ups. And so there's got to be consequences for actions that really just aren't good. Nobody's going to be happy with that, whether it's a judge or a defense attorney or a DA. I mean, I think what I'm talking about. And then and interesting, everyone has a style. Everybody has a style, and so just kind of thinking about that too. So yeah, I mean, I think kind of the bottom line is, man, When you're dealing with people, whether it's our own staff and offenders, it's just so important. The leadership and training is important. It is. And I feel like I'm getting better. I'm still not there, but I feel like I'm getting better. Um,
Well, okay,
we are a pretty policy and procedure heavy department, but we don't want policies that make no sense and
they've
have
got to
bad
be
outcomes.
at some point. Somebody with a brain makes decisions, and I'll tell you this
Yeah.
much. So this week I let everybody in our office know that I've got Yoon Kim, and I was like, throw me whatever darts you want me to blow into,
Yeah.
you know, to do and to do that. We can make him our voodoo doll this week or whatever. And so they're
Yeah.
going to be very disappointed. They're going to be very disappointed that I'm not like, going after you. But okay. But I will say this. And again, I mean, culture is something that you set from the top, right? And you are, and the best example of that in the courthouse is you walk into the place. We have 20 courts. I don't know how many courts we have. Somewhere in that neighborhood, and each and every one of them it's its own little kingdom. It's its own little culture, and every one of them takes on the personality of their judge. That goes to the bailiff, that goes to the court reporter, that goes to the coordinator. If the judge is mean or terse or can be a jerk to folks, then you're going to find the bailiff doing that too, right? If the judge is laid back, then the whole staff tends to be laid back. And one of the things about you, Yoon, and I'll tell you this, because I have fired off to you some I don't think they're nasty emails, but I like to think that nobody wants to hear my name up in your office. Okay. You guys have paid me the highest compliment that's possible, which is I've had people referred by probation officers to me. Okay. So on criminal cases, which is the highest compliment I think I can receive, which is, God, that guy sucks so much to deal with. If you want this done, you can send it to Jeremy. I think that's great. But you do but I will say that I have noticed I will say that I have noticed I'm having more dialogue than I have had with probation officers now than I have in the past. In the past, when you're a defense lawyer, you're kind of, in many ways, to a probation officer, you're kind of a non-entity, right? I don't have to answer to you. I answer to the judge. I answer to my directors, to Yoon, to my supervisors. Man, you're the eighth most important person I have to answer to. And so I'll sit here and listen to you and be polite, but then I'm going to hang up and not do it. And I'm finding myself actually having dialogue with supervision officers, which, look, and again, they may not come back and tell me what I want to hear at the end, but you know what? When you listen to me, that just makes a world of difference. Because, I mean, don't worry, I'm going to go to court and I'm going to get what I want anyway, right out of this. But
Yeah.
But I do want to get into COVID. I do want to talk about the pandemic. In every outline that I've written up for the podcast, COVID has been a topic, and we've not always gotten to it, but it's not as important. I think it's more important in your world than probably most other places with community supervision and corrections, because it's just such a hard thing to do remotely. Talk about COVID. Talk about the impact that it's had, and sort of how day-to-day life at CSCD has changed with the pandemic.
Oh man, so that's looking back at all the global emails I've sent out to staff. It's amazing. But spring break 2020.
We're still on it.
Yeah. So that, I mean, when the disaster declaration came out, I think we were the very first department to send employees home to work remote. Not everyone had laptops. In fact, half the department didn't have laptops. But I said, get your desktop, go home. We try to create a really safe environment up here where we reduce the population density. Everyone wore masks. We did a little little questionnaire, and then we allowed office visits to happen by Zoom or phone call. In fact, the state they have the standards on how we can communicate with probationers, and the reason why the state determines that is because that's how they determine our funding. You have to see a defendant once every 90 days to be eligible to receive funding for that defendant. and it's a face-to-face. But the state, had a waiver for that. And so, at first the concerns were, well, we're not going to be able to really talk to people over the phone. How are you going to really supervise? But you know what? It worked out. The feedback I got from a defendant losing jobs, felt scared to go out, whatever. We were able to accommodate all that. And it's like, yeah, Zoom with them, call them. And, we were able to actually call folks more often. Several feedback I got from probationers is like, well, thank you for calling. And a lot of people just had to talk and get things off their chest. Everyone had so much anxiety, and I did too. I remember I went through a point where I felt like I was going through a depression because I'm not leaving my house. I did come up to the courthouse. I came up to the office almost every day, but just the whole pandemic, it's like, man, this sucks. But we sent folks home, and we had pandemic policies. We're doing supervision remotely. We, maybe in the past we would do UAs on a lot of defendants, and we really just made it a lot more strategic. It's like, hey, if nothing's going on, there's no point in telling someone to come in and do a UA. Mm-hmm. There's got to be a reason other than let's just do it. And so we're everything just became really focused and strategic. Outcomes weren't bad. People might think, oh man, you must have just had a ton of violations and revocations all over the place. And the answer is no. So we learned a lot from it on how technology can help us. The county, of course, is awesome. They provided, with the CARES Act money, laptops for us so that we can supervise remotely. DocuSign. I remember, man, before DocuSign, a defendant we can email something, and whatever it is, a travel permit, whatever it is, and then they'd have to sign, somehow mail it back, scan it, take a picture, email, DocuSign, click, 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 click. So that's one of the things that technology really helped. But yeah, so even right now, about 40 to 50% of our staff works in the courthouse. We have 3 locations every day. There's still a lot of remote staff. They will come up if they have to meet face to face with the probationer, but it's been working. We were I think we're the first department to send people home remote, and we're going to be the last ones to bring everyone back full time officially. And so that's going to be later in the summer. But yeah,
I was going to ask you. So what going forward? I mean, what's going to stay? What changes from the pandemic can we count on just being permanent?
I do think that offices via Zoom. Now the state, there's a bill that's pending right now about us still qualifying for funding even after the pandemic, where we can strategically use it. Like if you've got transportation issues or you can't afford gas, hey, Zoom. Mm-hmm. What's the harm? So those are some things that are sticking around. The real negative impact for us for the pandemic, which I know a lot of attorneys felt just if you're running your own business in terms of revenue and things like that, is probation placements went down. Now the courts are working through a backlog. I listened to David Slayton of the OCA. He mentioned something like the backlog of jury trials is like over a year. And then there's just so many people out on bond. And so placements are down, which affects our funding. So I have a little sheet that I'm referring to now, but we reduced the number of our staff by 6%. We got rid of merit pay. We weren't able to do the same raise as the county. We do hiring freeze. Our expenditures for indigent defendants have definitely gone up, and we're seeing a huge reduction in supervision fees collected. And when I testified at the legislature last week, I basically said, this is not just my opinion, even TDCJ says that the funding formula for probation is broken. It hasn't changed since 1970. We get like $1.70 per felon per day. And it hasn't gone up in 20 years. And then
I'm acquitting everybody, and so that's even less felons for you.
You're acquitting everybody. But when we fund IOP, and it's $1,200. So, but again, I hate having to always just focus on resources, but that's the reality because the legislature set probation up to be funded by probation fees. And when, oh gosh, what in Collin County, 80% of all felony defendants have a court-appointed attorney. How does that work? So, we're kind of pushing, and there's, the 255 counties in the state, you have wide opinions on how things should be, but it's kind of like, man, you can't create a system where probation is funded from probation fees.
It makes it a for-profit endeavor. And
when we're going to waive everyone's fees.
Yeah, and when you're in hard times, the whole thing the whole thing crashes. You're watching JP Kathy and the Crew Network. You can see JP Kathy and the Crew between 7:30 and 9 Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This is the Lawyer Show. We're on between noon and 1 on Thursdays. I'm your lawyer, Jeremy Rosenthal. My co-counsel is Yoon Kim. Okay, Yoon. So now is the question that you've been waiting for. I am Red Raider. You are Longhorn.
Double Longhorn.
Double Longhorn.
Double Longhorn, yeah.
What do you got? What do you have to say for your basketball program and what you've done to us?
I think so. I'm a pessimistic fan.
And so Lawyer Show Nation hopefully already knows this because it was on the very front page of the Lubbock Avalanche Journal. You had to scroll really far down on the Austin American Statesman to find the same news, but the University of Texas has hired our men's basketball coach, Chris Beard, even though he was the fourth highest paid in the country, and every restaurant in Lubbock offered him free food. Sorry, Yoon, I was cutting you off. Go ahead.
Well, so I didn't realize Chris Beard played at UT.
I don't know if he played. He's a Texas. I don't know if he played. He was a student assistant there. I don't know that he played.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Student. So that's his.
He's an undergrad. Yeah.
I don't understand. But my thought is this: I think Chris Beard is a great coach, but there's something about when you come to Austin, you're no longer a great coach. That's the pattern that I've seen.
Let's hope. Let's hope that this.
I've become a very pessimistic Longhorn fan. My oldest son, born in 2009, he's sixth grade. He goes, "How come Texas has sucked my whole life?" And I'm like, I don't know, but it's just they have football, basketball. I mean, you name it.
I think there is a pressure cooker there that is really unrivaled. I mean, you get just so much fan scrutiny and so much media scrutiny. Now, Texas, I think. The last I read, their athletic department generates more revenue than any other department in the country, and I don't think it's particularly close. I know that Texas, Michigan, Ohio State are all up there, and Texas brings in, I think, over $100 million every single year in athletics. Yeah. And so there's institutional pressure. You've also got the fans. You've also got the media down there. But again, I mean, look, man, I'm all for you guys running him out of town. That's fine.
Yeah, we'll see. It's my expectations aren't high, but we'll see.
We'll see
someday.
As a Texas fan, you should have only the highest. Now, just because your
championship or bust, I guess.
Just because your team has never won it before shouldn't change that. We're all, really, and I was happy to see Baylor win the national championship because really, I mean, it's good for them. That's fine. That's all well and fine. I was really happy to see Baylor win it all because surely that's got to ramp up the pressure, right?
Yeah.
On because we can't have them winning it,
Yeah, I love the Big 12. I always support the Big 12. I'll even root for Oklahoma if it's a Big 12 versus SEC or something like that. So yeah, but yeah, it's been we'll see what happens. Yeah.
I accept your apology. I think that I take what you're saying as an apology to Red Raider Nation for what you guys have done to us.
Yes, I apologize. Yes.
But Like, I
Longhorns.
can't figure it. Like, for me, I'm like, Duke, I would understand. Kentucky, I would understand. North Carolina, I would understand. But you got to go there. You got to go to. Okay, fine,
I know.
fine, whatever.
Okay. When I saw the news, I did. You were the first person I thought about. Seriously,
Thank
I was
going
to text you, but I refrained.
I was the first person that I thought about too. No, Todd Shapiro, your Texas, your UT fellow alum. No, I know enough Texas people, and so the thing. Okay, so he had, and this is contract law. We're talking law, and in the docket room, there's a lot of sports talk too. I don't think this is inconsistent with the lawyer show, and so what happened was Coach Beard had a buyout of $5 million if he went to a Big 12 school, and it went down to $4 million if after April 1st of 2021, right? Because I guess he had
Got it. Yep.
So magically he spent all, and Shaka Smart, Texas's coach, quits 27th to 28th of March. And then Chris Beard is just radio silent for 4 days. And I'm texting all my UT buddies that morning, and I'm like, about 10 o'clock, you're going to get an announcement that says he's hired. So he had, not only that, but he also had to jam Tech out of $1 million. Thanks, pal. Thanks. Go have fun in Austin. I'm sure it'll be just like your childhood. So, all right, final thoughts on CSCD. Final things that you want America to know about probation in Collin County.
Yeah, actually, I do. I want it. Supervision is a collaborative effort. It really is, and I'm not just saying that. You've got, my bosses, the judges, who've been great. The DA's office, defense bar, Elise Ferguson and her team, county clerk, district clerk, sheriff's office. We gotta have the relationships and continue building them and work with folks. Because it really doesn't get done. And so, yeah, and even defense bar, y'all, for me, you guys have been really great to work with.
Okay.
But I also think it does help that I was a defense attorney. Let's be honest. A lot of attorneys have my number on their phone, and I tell anyone, if you've got a question or you need something, call me or text me. I will help you out. I mean, that I feel like that's my job.
Okay, so
I will never say no. So
here's a big point that I was kind of thinking beforehand that I to kind of visit about too, because you're bringing up a very excellent point, which is that you have when you are CSCD, right? You are a department of Collin County. Within the county, you fit somehow, although I know the money is screwy and all that stuff. But yes, you've got district judges that you're working for, county court at law judges that you're beholden to. You've got the DA's office that has the ability to make wide sweeping policy that affects what you do. They're at the table. You've got the Collin County Sheriff's Office in there somewhere. You've got the district clerks, the county clerks. You've got all these entities. And so, and now one thing that's great about you, Yoon, is that you are very transparent, you're very open, you'll come and do things like this. But my position is, as a defense lawyer, my position is that we don't have a seat at that table, nor should we. What and I've told all my lawyers, all the lawyers that work in our office, I have told other defense lawyers this as well. My position is my place is in the courtroom. And I don't have a seat at that table where policy is made, but I am gonna call it out, and I am gonna call it out in a courtroom if I do call it out. And so to me that's what a defense lawyer does. That's what a lawyer does, right? And so and I've done that. I've done that. I'd like to think on at least a few occasions, which has probably gotten my name used as profanity with CSCD, but that's what I think a lawyer does, right? A lawyer doesn't, I don't make policy, right? And not only that, I mean, we have 3 CDLA, the Collin County Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, but whoever's running that currently, it's Vanita Parker at Rosenthal, Calabas, and Tarian.
Yep.
Currently, that's who it is. But 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 that person may or may not be able to make concessions and negotiate now. And the willingness of Collin County, the willingness of the district judges, the willingness of the clerk, the willingness of you or the sheriff to give us a seat at the table is kind. But to me, our field of battle is in the courtroom, and that's our check and balance on the system. And I think that that's if there's one, and again, man, I think we're really lucky to have you. I really do, because again, I know that I have zinged you, and I know that I've shot you. I'll text you case law in anger. I'll text you, how can you get around this one? And if nothing, you're very honest, and you're very you're very clinical about it. You're not you don't throw it up, put it in the garbage. Now you may litigate against me on it, or the CSCD may take a different position on it. I'm being told that I'm beating up on you too much. No, I'm not. No, I'm being told that our time is up. But man,
it's a shame. We could go for another hour, I bet.
Let's see what I can do. Hold on. No? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Right. This brings an end to another vastly, wildly successful episode of The Lawyer Show. Next time you're in the library, think about ripping pages out of the book so your competitors don't have the right study material. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. I'll see you later, Jeremy. I hope we have more views than Judge Baxter. I'm going to look right now.
That ought to be pretty easy. We didn't really